Welcome to the new openEQUELLA 2026.1, due next Wednesday.
Okay, so welcome aboard, everyone. I'm Cath Fitzgerald, for those who I've not met before, and alongside Ian Stephenson, we'll be presenting the Guardians of the openEQUELLA Galaxy update for 2026.1. We'll show you how we're defending, hardening, and turbocharging your digital ecosystem. So, meet your guardians. Behind every secure galaxy is an elite squad of engineers, developers, QA and support professionals, and product managers. Our openEQUELLA development team has been working tirelessly in the ship's engineering bay to bring you the 2026.1 release. Their mission: to defend against dark matter exploits, upgrade your warp drives, and ensure your repository's journey is smooth and secure. Now, for those of you that know our team, you may recognize some faces in that image, in fact, all of them, because that is our openEQUELLA team. And I don't know if they're showing their faces on this meeting, but if you look carefully, you might see some resemblances there. Okay, so our core focus for this release breaks down into 4 primary objectives: completing our dashboard UI makeover, enabling zero-friction single sign-on, strengthening security shields against data exploits, and modernising our underlying back-end engine. So first of all, completing the bridge makeover. So as it says, this is not new functionality, but we've given the last 2 of the portlets shiny new uniforms. So that means that we've applied the Material UI technology to the last 2 portlets, which in 25.2 were actually just wrapped with they were legacy portlets wrapped in UI. So yeah, they've been completed now. And then special characters. So we had a number of clients that requested that we find some sort of solution, as more and more people are using special characters that are reserved for Lucene search operators in the titles and descriptions of their items that they add into openEQUELLA. So we've introduced a setting on the search page settings that allow you to actually escape special characters. And so when that's enabled, symbols are treated as literal text instead of triggering the Lucene special characters. So that will prevent people from getting searches where either errors come up or nothing comes back. And so, yes, so that's an option that administrators can turn on in your institutions. Now, I'm going to hand over to Ian to explain the more technical side of the release.
Excellent. Thanks, Cath. So yes, as well as those front-end bits, we do have a number of sort of back-end bits to discuss. The first of which is we've continued our work on our OpenID Connect single sign-on feature. This was released a couple of versions back, but one bit that has changed is this ability to have seamless single sign-on into your openEQUELLA instance. The initial introduction of openID C was such that when you went to your openEQUELLA instance, you had the login panel on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, you had a login with single sign-on. If you were authenticated to your identity provider for your organization, such as Microsoft Active Directory, when you click on that, you'd go straight into openEQUELLA. If not, you'd go off to their login page. With seamless single sign-on, you'll no longer need to click that button. So if you're already authenticated to your institution and you go to openEQUELLA, you'll be able to go straight in. And that's the same if you've got a link to an item or an attachment, especially if those links are embedded in your LMS content. By default, we will continue to have it as a manual click to login process. But if you go into the settings, you'll find there is this new enable seamless SSO option to turn it on, and that'll allow you to then go straight in. So providing a more polished experience there for single sign-on. On to the next slide. The other bit we've been spending a lot of time on, as per Elle mentioning in the introduction, is we've been doing a lot of work to improve the security. So for a bit of context, being an ISO 27001 certified company, part of that process means we have a lot of things we do around security. And one of those, at the very least, is we do annual penetration tests on our software and also on our hosting environments. So through that, we get notified of any new and interesting security issues that are coming up in the world and anything that may apply to our legacy code or any of our new code. Through that, combined with the various security testing our clients do, we end up with a good amount of information around what we can do to make openEQUELLA more secure. And so then we go about scheduling those in and actioning those. And in this year, we've had a few interesting ones that have come out, which relate to sort of the power that we provide with openEQUELLA. So we've listed a few here that we have touched and will be mentioned in some of those CVEs. So the first one is our pre-login notice. We've changed the type of images that we support to embed in your pre-login notice. And we've locked that down to just 3 supported types to protect against various interesting cross-site scripting attacks that you can do with images, but also we used to allow you to embed things like PDFs and other HTML files in there, but the attack surface was just too large, so we considered that unacceptable. And so now you can basically just do PNGs, JPEGs, and GIFs in your pre-login notice. For all the different web pages you see, especially in the legacy openEQUELLA, not in the new UI, but in the legacy one, we use a templating engine called FreeMarker. FreeMarker has been around for a very long time, just as openEQUELLA has, now being over 20 years old. And over time, it continually adds new security features to protect across a vector of attacks known as template injection. We, in this release, have used some of those new features to further lock down what you can do in your FreeMarker templates. However, what we've locked down is more so the kind of things attackers would use. You should find no difference in things like your display templates and your other bits where you can actually do your own HTML templates for items, but it does lock things down further. Another thing on the templating and dynamic content is the ability to do scripting in openEQUELLA. Undoubtedly a very powerful feature, which provides people with some very interesting features in openEQUELLA. But like all powerful features, it does open itself up to a lot of different attacks. In the scripting there is the ability to execute operating system commands. We have now introduced a new feature in 26.1 where you have to whitelist which commands are acceptable to run. And that may be something to discuss with your infrastructure teams. And you'll be able to enter them into a list and configuration file on the server, and then that'll allow what you can actually put in your scripts. If you put something else in the scripts, then they will be denied. We've also been doing a lot of work around our APIs. So APIs are obviously an easy way to get into a system and get data, allow integration, that kind of thing. But APIs also offer a great attack vector for would-be attackers. So we need to constantly check how they're working and which ones we need and which ones we can get rid of. And most of the APIs require ACL checks on them, so they do have ACL checks. But again, this is why it comes back to making sure your ACLs in your institution are correctly configured. As I'll also mention, as part of ensuring we have a secure product, we need to deprecate old, unused features. We'll typically look out to our clients to try and understand which features you are using, and then we'll also typically put out deprecation notices ahead of time so that clients can flag any feature that they really want to see kept around. However, the more features you have, the more code you have, the more complexity you have, and they all contribute to the number of attack vectors attackers can, again, use. So if things are not being used, we're best to remove them because it improves security and improves maintenance. A few that are being removed in 26.2 and announced in 26.1 is Blackboard support, which we have limited use for. We don't have clients using at the moment. And as we all know, Blackboard used to have a very different architecture to what it has today. So the security implications there are significant. If we have clients who still need Blackboard, we'll put it back in and we'll use the new secure processes. There was a very old mobile app in there, which hasn't been used by anyone for many years. But again, there's no point leaving around code that's not used because of the issues I mentioned before. SOAP was the de facto API standard that everyone used to use for integration. However, SOAP has a lot of issues and things have moved on since then. Most integrations are now done over REST or GraphQL. And as a result, we're going to remove the SOAP API. In 26.1, it'll be turned off by default. There will be a configuration flag for anyone who really needs it to turn it back on, but in 26.2, it will be completely removed. And lastly is the legacy UI. As I mentioned, we have a whole different way of rendering and generating the old web pages. So the more we can remove those features, the less security concerns we have there. So that feature will be removed in 26.2 as well.
And just thank you, Ian. Just a couple of questions that we've had through that relate to this particular slide. So Sam asked earlier in response to my point in the security overview is, it'd be good to have a list of older features that are being deprecated. So in addition to what Ian's just shared, we'll make sure that they are listed within the features guide and the release notes that will come out next week in alignment with 26.1. And Angie from TAFE New South Wales just asked when 26.2 is being actioned. So 26.2 development has started. We expect to release that in December. We don't quite have a date at this point. Anton has also asked, will EBI and EMU have a future and will move away from SOAP API dependency? Yes, for the EBI. So the EBI tool, professional services team have been working on a version that doesn't rely on SOAP, that utilizes RESTful services instead, and it's essentially complete but needs some comprehensive testing. So we'll keep the community up to date as to when that becomes available. The EMU tool, we don't have immediate plans to replace. Historically, that's been more of a consultant tool. Certainly, feel free to contact me separately and we can explore, how that functionality might be able to be replaced in other ways.
All right.
I'll hand back to Cath and Ian.
Thanks, Al. All righty. So looking at quantum engine upgrades. So this is obviously looking under the hood, all the things that happen to the engine of openEQUELLA. And as mentioned, in the security sphere, there's a lot of things that happen there. But we have also been looking at features in that area in this release. One of the big features that we're introducing in 26.1 is the GraphQL API. So as we remove SOAP and we still have REST, we're going to add a new API layer which uses GraphQL, which is a standard mechanism out there. And it's an improvement on REST and gives us more flexibility, more security. But the reason we're introducing that is because this is our first step towards laying the foundation for the replacement of the admin console. So the admin console uses another communication mechanism to talk to your servers for configuration. So that communication mechanism we wish to replace to improve security. And so we'll do that through the new GraphQL API. With this initial release, it currently will cover mainly collections and schemas, the management of them, as well as users and groups, and a number of other items as well. And we'll have a little bit of a look at that and see what that means in a moment. But that's probably one of the biggest changes in there. There is a very large amount of work required to replace all the different types of communications the admin console does. But between this release and the next release, we're hoping to establish a very complete GraphQL API layer that will facilitate later on putting the admin console functionality into the web. There's also been some work done around the staging API. For those who use the API, they would have noticed for many, many years, there's been a file API and a staging API. And the file API has forever been marked as deprecated, but has just been sitting there. In 26.1, we have merged the functionality of the file API into the staging API and then removed the file API. So now all functionality required to manage files attached to items or creating new items can be done through the staging API. We've also done some updates to support the latest versions of ImageMagick, as well as Moodle. Moodle have changed how REST APIs work between Moodle modules and external services. To support that latest version of Moodle required us to rework our Moodle module and also to change how those APIs are presented in openEQUELLA. As a result, with 26.1, it will only support the latest version of the openEQUELLA Moodle module. And in a similar way, the latest version of the Moodle module will only support 26.1 and onwards. So for those upgrading using Moodle, you'll need to upgrade both of them at the same time. Finally, looking at the space junk cleanup, we always clean up a good amount of space junk in our releases, and that goes down to updating the hundreds of dependencies that openEQUELLA use to provide the thousands of features that openEQUELLA offers you. Through that process, that gives us greater performance, it improves our security standing, and allows us to make sure that we can always provide the latest features possible. The few core ones that we've done as usual is we've updated Material UI, which is the framework we use to provide a material design like interface in the new UI. We also update Hibernate, which is a key layer because it abstracts our access to the 3 different types of databases we support. So keeping that up to date ensures we have maximum performance to the database as well as security there. Apache Lucene is the layer we use to provide content discovery, searching, security, a lot of very important features, and we're up to date with that again in this release. And most importantly, although we have Hibernate, we still need to make sure we have the current drivers for each of the 3 databases we support. So we always try and release the latest versions in our latest release to again make sure that we're performing well against the database, we're not unnecessarily loading databases, and everything's working as we would hope. There's some of the key ones, but as I said, we've updated hundreds in this release as we typically do, so there's many others as well. All right, I think the next one. So in here, I might try and share my screen. Zoom doesn't love my computer that much, but I'll share and I'll show just some of this GraphQL stuff to give a bit of context of where this sits. So Cath, I don't know whether you need to stop sharing for me to share.
Yes, I think I do. There we go.
Yep.
And perhaps just while Ian's bringing up his screen, I might just touch on a couple of the other chats that have popped up during your overview, Ian. So yeah, Angie from TAFE New South Wales wanted to clarify that the legacy UI will no longer be an option from 26.2 onwards. That's correct. So so we're giving this notice now that yeah, in 26.2 you'll just have the UI. Marilyn asked a question about, is Edalex considering a merge option to manage duplicate resources?
It's not been something that's come up on our radar on the roadmap before, but we can certainly add it as a feature request and look at where we might fit that in the roadmap in the future.
Terrific. So yeah, Cath, if you can action adding that would be great, and we can explore that in the future. And then Sam, just an idea: could it be possible to get the best of EMU and EBI and merge into one REST compatible app? It's certainly something we can think about. I think it's worth, and I've had this discussion with a number of clients, reminding for the EBI and the EMU tool, they were, I guess, consultant tools that we developed, and rather than needing our clients to engage us every time they wanted to use those tools, we made the decision to make them available. So they're not technically part of the supported stack of openEQUELLA, but yeah, we can certainly talk with Nelson and Perez around what that future functionality coverage looks like. And back to you, Ian.
All right, not a problem. So I'm hoping people can see the admin console on my screen. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep, excellent. So I am running this against my dev server. So yes, it is saying 26.2. As we said, we have started work on that. But I just want to highlight, so admin console, the main areas we've started adding support and uses a whole different communications layer now is the metadata schemas, where you can obviously go in and manage your schemas and change structure and all that kind of thing. And the other area is collection definitions. So you're able to go into these, and as a result, all the things you can actually manage on a collection, including wizards and everything, are now accessible through a GraphQL API. We've also done some of the user management things, such as internal users, groups, and roles. So there are things around that. So what I want to do is then show you how that's actually exposed within the new GraphQL API. So if you are at your openEQUELLA server, those familiar with the REST API know you can go API docs.do, and it gives you a user interface to explore the API docs. In a similar fashion to that, there is now a new endpoint which is configurable on the server. By default, it's actually off, but you can come in here and go GraphQL UI, and then you have a GraphQL browser. So in this view, you have two parts. You have an interactive editor to create your GraphQL query, so QL being query language. And in here, you've got the documentation of all the different types. So in GraphQL, you basically have queries and mutations. Queries is where you want to fetch information. Mutations is where you want to modify records. So in queries, we basically namespace the group of queries. So you've got ones which are around metadata schemas and also collections. And in a similar way, if I were to go into mutations, you'll find a similar naming convention for those which have mutations. Not everything has a mutation. So through that way, you can look into something. So if I wanted to go into looking for internal users and go into the queries, see what the queries are. If I want to do a list and click on that, it'll give me more information about all the different parameters. And I can also look at the return types. This one's a somewhat involved one to support pagination, but using standard GraphQL cursor connections. And you can go in and see like the full detail that's going to be in a record. Once you've seen what you have, then you can come over here and you can build up your queries. So here's one I wrote earlier just to list the internal users. I'm saying just give me the first 100, and then I can run that query and I get my results to explore here. And I'll go through there. And then I could just say, I also wanted to get first name, and it'll give me some type ahead help there, and maybe email. And then I can go through and I can get those bits of information there. So this is the power of the GraphQL query language, in that you only request the pieces of information you need, and in that way it can be more efficient. In a similar way, you can actually also have more than one query in the one request that goes to your server. So here, if I list out my schemas, I get my schemas listed out first in this list response, but I could also get more detail in one specific schema in that one request. And so as a result, you can go through and get all different kinds of things. Some data is in a slightly different structure. So roles, for example, come through in more of a sort of a JSON response, but there's things you can do there as well. Sorry, that's simple roles, but in here, for example, where you actually get the roles and you get the ACL expressions and all kinds of wonderful stuff. So I just want to provide a glimpse of where you'll be able to get in and explore the API. As I said, there is a server-side configuration setting to enable this. It's off by default to focus on just limiting sort of security of your institution, those kind of things. And all these are protected by various ACLs and that kind of thing.
We've already got our first love it response from Marilyn. So very good.
Excellent. All right, now this is where I might struggle to stop sharing from memory. I'm sorry. If Dan or Al wish to just terminate my sharing session, that could be useful.
Done.
Thank you. All right, so back to Cath.
And that was it, just open for questions.
So one of the questions that has come through from Maboob at Macquarie, if we can't get Moodle module updated at the same time as 26.2, what are the implications?
So it's basically, I'd have to say first and foremost, it's not supported because we've only tested in that combination because of the limitations that are there. So I can't give you a definitive what will work, what won't work. I can say that any of the sort of REST API bits will be broken. So something to keep in mind here. So the Moodle module has currently LTI 1.1 based authentication, although it also has some of the older shared secrets based authentication. After that, the contribution of any content is done through the REST APIs, and those REST APIs have drastically changed. So as a result, the communication layer won't be there to be able to search for items and contribute items. Or you might be able to search, but you won't be able to contribute. So it is basically going to be broken. The alternative is we do support LTI 1.3, and we still strongly recommend people move to LTI 1.3. It will only be a matter of time before your security team says, why are you using LTI 1.1? If you are using LTI 1.3, then your Moodle integration will work in that form. But yeah, so it depends. But unfortunately, they do need to be synchronized because of the massive change in the comms layer there.
Thanks, Ian. Any other questions for Cath and Ian? Sam from CSU's just asked, would be interesting to know how these query results can then be expressed ongoing. Reporting question mark with an item summary. I suppose it's all about what type of results are possible. And feel free to check the chat, Ian, if you want to absorb that question a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll just have a look there.
I can just talk to it as well if you like.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, you gave the user information and stuff. So I was just be interested to see, for example, like we use XSLTs and things to, you know, grab information about an item and things like that. Is that potentially, yeah, is the results that could be got from this, could it be used in a report? Could it be like how, or is it more of a, you're just wanting the information for that one thing and you get it?
Yeah, so as I showed there, it will have list functionalities. I will highlight that first and foremost, the information being retrieved initially will be administration focused as opposed to searching and retrieving items. We will hope to add that later. That functionality at the moment will remain in the REST API where it currently is to support the new UI. Long term may get there, but as far as GraphQL goes, it is a query language where you can retrieve lists and change what lists you get as far as the data that's returned. The format changing that you might also do with XSLT is not so much what the query is changing. So you may still want to retrieve that data, which will come back mostly in a JSON payload.
Yep.
And then you would probably need to change it into something that you would either change to XML to consume with XSLT, or maybe you would just format directly from there.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Terrific. Well, thanks very much, Ian and Cath, and for those questions that have come through.